You?
All right. Interview with Mr. Frederick H. Kaufmann on 28 February 2001 at the Ronkonkoma Army Flight Facility, Long Island. Interviewer is Lieutenant Colonel Robert von Hasselm. Videographer is Mr. Michael Akey. Mr. Kaufmann, tell me where and when you were born.
I was born in Brooklyn, Canarsie,
Mm-hmm.
September 10th, 1927.
Okay. And did you grow up in Canarsie?
No, we moved to Flushing,
Okay.
which is now built up quite a bit.
Yeah.
We lived on a farm.
Oh.
My parents died when I was a baby.
And who'd you live with?
I lived with my grandmother
Uh-huh.
and grandfather.
So you grew up on a farm in Flushing.
Yes.
It's very unusual nowadays.
Well, I don't know if you know where Flushing, Hillcrest, the Metropolitan Life Insurance.
Yeah?
It used to be a golf course, and across the street was a farm.
Oh, okay. And when did you enter the service? Was 1944?
1944, October, I went down and enlisted the day after I was 17, and they called me in October.
Okay. Why did you pick the Navy?
I always liked the Navy. Nothing against the Army, just liked the Navy more.
Okay. And what were your initial duties in the Navy?
Gunner's mate. I was
Tell
a
me.
gunner's mate, striker.
What's a striker?
It's a seaman gunner's mate. Before you make third class, you're learning
Mhm.
everything about the guns.
Where did you initially go in the Navy?
To boot camp, you mean?
Mhm.
Sampson, New York.
Mm.
Up around Geneva.
Yeah. Tell me, what was Sampson like?
It was cold when I was up there. I got up there in October, and it was cold, very cold, and it seemed to snow all the time.
What was your life like at Sampson? I mean, what were your daily activities like?
Get up early in the morning, go to chow, come back, and you go to work.
What kind of training?
Marching, for one thing, and then we had the gas where you go into the house where they got the gas, they let the gas go, it's tear
Yeah.
gas. And it was just seamanship, how to tie knots and things like that.
Did you ever get off post at Sampson? Did you get out into the local
Yes, I
community?
did, once.
Yeah, what was that like?
I think we had 6 hours, I ain't sure exactly now, into Geneva.
And then after Sampson, where'd you go?
With the Shoemaker, California, from Shoemaker, I went to receiving barracks on Market Street in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Stayed there for a short while. And then I was on a troop ship to the Pacific, the USS Evangeline,
Mhm.
It's a honeymoon ship during the 20s.
Yeah.
It was an old ship.
And where did you?
And then I wound up on USS Wasatch,
Mhm.
AGC-9. It was a flagship for the 7th Amphibious.
And what did the AGC stand for?
Amphibious Group Communication.
Uh-huh. And what were your duties on that?
Gunner's mate. Take care of the guns, clean the guns, work on the guns.
Mhm. And did you have a particular duty station on the ship?
Yes. Offhand, I don't remember, so long ago.
Yeah.
And while I was on, we made a couple of invasions.
Yeah, tell me about those.
We went to Borneo, Balikpapan and Borneo.
Mhm.
We brought the Australian 7th Division in there, the desert rats that chased around a lot of North Africa.
Yeah.
And then we went back to Mortai. And then we went down to Los Negros in the Admiralty Islands. They took all that 20 millimeters off and put 40 millimeters on quad 40s.
Mhm.
Of course, they said that we might be in the invasion of Japan. And they wanted to give us enough firepower. Of course, 40 millimeters is a little bit better than 20 millimeter.
Mhm.
But it never happened. But we did go to Wakayama. We brought forces into Wakayama.
Mhm.
And then from there, we went to Tientsin, China, right outside of Teku.
Mhm.
But the Nationals were coming down out of the hills. So I guess we figured we better get out of there because I guess they chewed at anything that was floating.
Hmm.
And we also went to Nagoya.
Mhm.
I got a little ahead of myself. We went to Nagoya from Wakayama,
Yep.
and then we went up to China. And that was it. We came back to the States, landed in San Diego in December '45.
Mhm.
Then I was out for a while, and they called me back in during the Korean War.
Okay, now, were you with the reserve unit between the,
Yes, yes.
which reserve unit were you with?
The one in Whitestone.
Okay.
I was on a Snyder. 714, I think it was. Or
DD or DE?
DE.
DE. Okay. Yes.
I was also on a Harris. That was out of Whitestone also. Of course, they've all been decommissioned and they're not around anymore.
All right, we'll come back to that in a minute. So, when you were called up for Korea, what happened?
I went down to Whitehall Street and they asked me where I wanted to go, and I was talking to someone in line. He said, "Why don't you go to Panama?" He says, "It's a nice climb." So I went down to Panama. I spent almost 2 years in Panama. Couldn't get out of there because I didn't like the idea of being there. It's just getting trouble down there too easy.
No, you didn't like Panama.
No, I just wanted to get on a ship going through to go to Korea. But
Don't mind me asking, what kind of trouble could you get into in Panama?
a little bit of drinking.
Hmm. Were you ever able to get out of there and get on a ship?
No, they finally sent me home after almost 2 years.
All right, so then what happened after that? I mean, what did you do when you got back from Korea?
Well, I went to work. I worked on construction out here on Long Island.
Hmm. Any particularly interesting projects, or?
Well, I worked on everything from soup to nuts out here, everywhere and anywhere,
Mhm.
Nassau and Suffolk. And I joined the Naval Reserve back in Whitestone again. That's when I got put on the Harris.
And how long were you with them?
About 4 years. Then I joined the Seabees, MCB 13. And then I seen someone I got out of there, I think it was 79. Then I seen someone down at the bank, a recruiter.
Mhm.
I don't even know if he's around anymore. And he says to me, "Why don't I join the National Guard up here, MacArthur?" So I joined that in 1980, and I stayed till, I think it was 1989 and 1990. There was an E company
E Company of
right here.
142 Aviation?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get married, kids, anything you want to tell us about?
Well, I'm on my third marriage now.
Mhm.
My wife's died.
I'm sorry to hear that.
My one wife died in 1966. She had a heart operation, and December, and she died in March. It didn't work out.
Mhm.
And I got married in 1968 again.
Mhm.
My wife died in 1980. So I guess I couldn't live alone. I got married again. And I'm still married now. Married now 13 years. I have 2 daughters. One daughter's in Dallas.
Mhm.
She's coming up next month to see her daughter get married, which is my granddaughter.
Mm.
And my other daughter lives in Ozone Park.
Mhm.
Her husband works for the schools in there.
Well, let's see. Let's go back and a couple of things you brought up I'd like to talk about in a little more detail. Okay, first of all, what was it like living on a farm in Flushing? It's
One thing, we had no electricity at that time.
Mhm.
It was all candlelight. And it was just, I thought it was great.
What kind of farm was it?
Truck farm, vegetables.
Yeah.
And I also worked for the farmer.
Mhm.
Picked tomatoes, cabbage, everything.
Where'd you take the vegetables to sell them?
Well, he had his own trucks. He used to take them in the market.
Okay.
He used to load them up like every other day and take the run all the way into wherever he's got to go.
What did you do for schooling? Where'd you go to school?
I went to public school 154, which it was on 164th Street near Queens General Hospital.
Mhm.
And then I went to 163, which is off 159th Street off Long Island Expressway now, which used to be World's Fair Boulevard or Horace Harding Boulevard.
Mhm.
And
How'd you get to school in the morning?
walk.
About how far was it?
Maybe a mile, maybe a little less.
Now, what'd you do for, for fun, for friends?
After a while, I used to go out and play ball.
Mhm.
And there wasn't that much fun like it. Out today, it's a different ball game out there today.
Mhm.
And
You ever go down to, like, Jamaica to go shopping or to
yes,
movies?
we always used to go to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And I used to go to movies on Lois Valencia. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Mhm.
And I haven't been down there in years. I don't know what it's like anymore.
Oh, that's all changed.
Right.
Uh,
And I used to go down to Flushing quite a bit.
Yep.
And
Now, what do you remember about, you went into the Navy in 1944. So Pearl Harbor. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
yes, I was home and I was sleigh riding that day, I remember. And my grandfather said Pearl Harbor was bombed that night. I don't think anybody really knew where Pearl Harbor was at the time. And,
What do you remember thinking? What kind of impact did it make on you?
well, I figured we were going to have a war.
What do you remember about, now, it was a couple of years between the start of the war and you were old enough to enlist. What was life like in wartime New York, wartime Queens?
Well, a lot of things were rationed.
Mhm.
I don't forget, and I didn't have a car, but we bought a car. A friend of mine, both of us, we chipped in $20. We bought a 1928 Model A,
Mhm.
and he worked on it, and he got it running, and I forget how many gallons of gas we allotted for the gas ration. I worked in a factory then. I went to work on a 15 or 16 it had to be.
Which factory?
A tea factory in Long Island City.
What they make?
A tea factory. They made tea bags.
Tea bags. Oh.
And then I worked for, then later I went down, I was working for American Airlines cleaning the C-46s and C-54s.
Over at Idlewild?
No, at LaGuardia.
Okay. Yeah.
And I worked there, and I was waiting to be called into the Navy, and he finally called me.
Over at LaGuardia, do you remember ever seeing any of the anti-aircraft guns or defenses?
No, I seen a couple of accidents.
Like what?
I think it was, I'm not sure, I think it was a P-51 came in, and the guy put the brakes on. I guess they got front wheel, well, they only got one wheel in the front. She went right over on the nose. And then there was another one, a couple of mechanics put, I think they said, a generator in the plane. They were supposed to taxi it up and down outside the runway, outside the hangar, but instead they took it up.
Do you ever remember any talk of like air raids, the possibility of air raids against New York or
Oh, sure,
blackouts?
you know.
Hey, tell me about that. What was that one all about?
Well, everybody says, it'll never happen, which it never did.
Mhm.
And it was kind of scary because, in Europe they had the same thing, when the planes landed right in their backyard. They had fight right in their own backyard. And I figured I'd rather fight 12,000 miles away than right 12 miles away, right?
Did you remember any special arrangements, blackouts, air raid warnings?
Yeah, right. I always remember that the traffic lights are all blacked out except for a little hole in the middle. And you could just see the green or the red.
They were blacked out except for a little hole in the middle?
Yeah, yeah.
And what about any other special requirements for like curtains, or did you have air raid wardens go around?
Yeah, well, they'd be walking around the street, you know, lights out, certain hour. But one thing I'll never forget is like off Coney Island, they forgot to turn the lights down, and the ship would go by like a silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
Submarines used to sink them out there. I forget. I think it was January of 1942. It was like the worst month.
Yeah, it was.
I think they had like 12 or 14 ships sunk out there.
Any other things that particularly changed in Queens during those early war years? I mean,
Well, I guess I was too young to realize what was going on.
Mhm.
Like I say, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, when I was 14 years old, 13 or 14 years old.
Right. Let's jump ahead now. We're talking about time at the amphibious forces. You get time to spend any time with the Australians? What were they like?
I never met him, we had one of the Australian generals on the ship.
Uh-huh.
And we also had, before I was on the ship, we had MacArthur on there.
Mhm.
And a few other generals.
Did you actually ever have to fire the guns on board the ship?
Yeah, sure.
Was it for?
Well, when we invaded Borneo,
Mhm.
they said it was Sunoco gas. They were burning quite a bit, and then the B-25s would go over and drop a couple of bombs on them and make the fire go up again, and that was it.
Was your ship ever under attack by a Japanese aircraft?
It was before I got on there. We shot down one plane,
Mhm.
one Zeke, I guess it was, or Zero.
What about Japanese submarines? Were they a problem?
When I left Pearl Harbor, I was on the Evangeline. It was like I said, an Army troop ship,
Right.
and we had a sub following us. And the DEs were out there dropping their depth charges. I don't know whether they got her or not.
Okay, let's jump ahead again to the occupation in Japan. Did you get off the ship a lot?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what was it like?
I got off in Nagoya and I got off in Wakayama.
Yeah.
And everything went on like nothing ever happened. The factories are working, the people were working. And when I got off in Nagoya, they asked for a one-man working party, and I happened to be the one.
Mhm.
And there was a weapons carrier waiting for me at the dock. And he took me out, maybe 5 miles. And there was piles of money there. Metal money, not paper. And they had public relations, everybody taking pictures of me. And I was shoveling the money in bags. Matter of fact, I still got some home.
Oh.
It's got to be at least 50 years old. What it's worth, I don't, maybe it's not worth anything. But it came from the islands and China.
Hmm. So what happened to the money that you were shoveling into the bags? You know?
I have no idea. They were like 50-pound bags. And, public relations was taking movies and they say, look this way, look that way, look this way. Everybody's taking my picture.
Hmm. And what about, and that was about what time? Late 1945?
That was 45. That was roughly September, October. I ain't sure now.
And what about, did you get any time to spend with the Japanese?
Yeah, we went on Liberty there
What was it
in
like?
Wakayama. They act as like, there was really no war, They were very calm and cool. Not to change the subject, but
Mhm.
India had an earthquake, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
they would say there were roughly 100,000 people killed, right? And we sunk a fishing boat on a chance. There was 9 people killed, and they moved everything, the earthquake, back to page 50, and now they're talking about 9 people killed. They put that on page 1. Maybe I don't understand what's, you know, maybe it's me, I don't know. But a lot of guys don't forgive and forget.
Right.
And what they did on Bataan March, with the nurses, with the men,
Mm-hmm.
and
So that's still, you still think of that, huh? It's still,
wouldn't you?
yeah.
You know, when a guy fell on the side of the road, they'd bayonet him a couple of times and leave him lay there dead, or dying.
Yeah, I know
And then they put him on a ship, in a hole, maybe 200, 300 men, and took with no water, no food. And then we were supposed to apologize for the atom bomb.
Yeah, I know we interviewed a Bataan Death March survivor about 2 weeks ago.
Is that right?
Yeah. How did you first hear about the atrocity stories?
It was in all the papers, and I was in the Philippines for a while.
Okay. That was about 43 or 44 when the news started to come out?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. Of course, that happened in
41 and
41,
42.
yeah, into 42, right.
Yeah, it took a little while to get the word out, though. Let's jump ahead to after World War II, because we don't have an opportunity to talk about
Sure.
some things that you were involved in too often with people. The Whitestone Naval Reserve Unit. Were you also a member of the New York Naval Militia at the
Yes,
same time?
yes.
Okay. And what was that like? Well, tell me about it, because,
The militia?
yeah, and,
Well, we didn't really do anything. It was just, they said, they came around with papers that said, you know, we want everybody to join the militia, and just sign your name here, and that was it. That's all I ever heard from it.
so pretty much everybody who was in the Naval Reserve Unit
Right,
also
was-
signed up?
Right.
Okay. Did you ever get called out to go on a state emergency, like, you know, a natural
No.
disaster?
No.
Anything like that? Either with them or the MCB-13?
No.
Okay.
Of course, they had, some of the guys were sent to the prison as guards,
Yeah, that was 1979.
right?
And so the Whitestone unit basically made up crews for destroyer escorts?
Yes, yes.
And where were the destroyer escorts?
We had one in Whitestone, which was the Snyder, and then they got the Harris later. Then the Coates was across the Sound at Fort Schuyler. And there was 1 or 2 down in Philadelphia. We had a flotilla of 5. There was one in the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
Yeah. What about anything over at Staten Island, or?
No, not that I remember. They might have moved them in later.
Now, so these destroyer escorts, it was basically like you say, a flotilla that destroyer escorts.
Right.
And the Whitestone unit, and I imagine the Brooklyn unit, they would man up, they would make up the crews.
Yes,
You were assigned to a particular ship at any given time, right?
yes, I was.
Like you were assigned to the Snyder.
Snyder and then the Harris. Right.
Right. And gunners made up both?
Yes.
Okay. Were there other kinds of Naval Reserve units at Whitestone? Other kinds of crews or other kind of units? Or was it all
Well,
destroyer
they came from upstate to go on a Harris.
Mhm. And,
When they took a cruise, they came down, they bust them down,
Mhm.
and they made up the crew.
what about, were there any submarine crews or?
No, we operated down in Gitmo with a submarine. I think it was the Blackfish,
Mhm.
and she was. That was her home port, I'm pretty sure.
And the Blackfish was the one you practiced against?
Yes.
And how often did you drill? Was it once a week or once a month?
Once a month, 1 weekend a month.
1 weekend a
You
month?
go in on a Friday night and get let go at 2 o'clock on a Sunday.
Yeah. Walk me through it. What was a typical drill like? I mean, what would happen when you come in on a Friday
Well,
night?
a lot of the times you'd get on maybe, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, and they decide they're gonna leave roughly 7:30, 8 o'clock, and you go out, maybe a little gunnery practice, have a plane fly over with a sleeve, and the idea is hit the sleeve, not the plane.
Mm-hmm. This was on Friday night?
No, it's usually Saturday,
Saturday.
and then we'd come in and we'd anchor maybe off Fort Hamilton, and then Sunday morning we'd go back to the garage.
So you'd actually take the destroyer out, escort out. And at Whitestone, what would you come down the East River? Or
East River, right?
come down the East River, go to Lower Bay,
Mm-hmm.
out to the Atlantic?
Right.
Where'd you run the gunnery practice?
Roughly 10 or 15 miles off Long Island.
Go ahead.
We came back from Jamaica, I forget what year it was, and I forget who it was, the coach broke down off Fort Lauderdale. So we had to turn around and go back and tow it home.
And you were doing this basically, what years now?
Well, it was on a Harris, it was 1966. But I was on a Snyder, it was 1950, because we pulled into San Juan, June 25th, 1950.
Mhm.
You remember that day, right?
Say June?
25th, 1950?
Well, I remember, yeah, that's the start of the Korean War.
That was when the North invaded the South, right?
Yeah.
And we pulled in, and everybody on the ship says, hey, we're going to go around through the canal, which we didn't, but it was ironic, that we pulled into San Juan that day.
Now, you started out in the Naval Reserve right after World War II,
Yes,
and that was at Whitestone.
right,
Okay, and at that time you were on a destroyer escort?
yes. And we'd usually drill inside the armory,
Okay.
and when the weather was nice, we'd go on a Snyder.
Uh-huh. Take her out.
Right.
Now, for annual training, that would be 2 weeks in the summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you do for annual training?
Go down to Gitmo, fire at a sleeve out there, go out in the morning and come back maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mhm.
And we tie up at the pier, and
Wasn't a lot of places to go on leave in Guantanamo.
well, it was the Whiteheads Club.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. What about any special activities or events while you were in the Whitestone unit? Like parades or...
No, I don't really, I guess some of the guys did go on parades.
Well, most of the guys in the unit, World War II veterans?
Majority of them were, right.
Uh-huh. Do you remember any of your officers or chief petty officers?
Oh, well, it's one guy who was first class gunner's mate, I remember him, yeah. His name was Beryl Hamilton.
Uh-huh. What do you remember about him?
He was first class, and he knew what he was talking about.
You ever stay in touch with any of those guys anymore?
I did for a while, and then, they fade away. You don't call this year, you don't call no cards, and then you just drift off.
Remember any unusual training incidents while you were on the destroyer escorts? Accidents, training incidents?
Well, one time we changed movies, and I had to shoot the line handling gun over, and the idea is hit right over the mount, the first mount.
And now, after that, you went on to the Seabees.
Yes, I transferred, because I didn't want to go into the Brooklyn Navy Yard, so I transferred to Seabees, and they were out here in Huntington.
Oh, because they were reassigning the destroyer crews to the Brooklyn Navy Yard?
Yes,
Why were they doing that?
I forget what happened, but they didn't use the pier anymore. They had a pier out there in Whitestone, and what happened, they didn't want to use it anymore. I don't realize why, I don't know why, but they sent the Harris over to Brooklyn Navy Yard. And I didn't care to go to Brooklyn Navy Yard, so I joined the Seabees. I transferred over.
But how many Ds would normally be at Whitestone? 1, 2?
One.
One.
And there was one across
Ed Schuyler.
at Schuyler, that was the Coates. There's one at Brooklyn Navy Yard. I don't know what happened to her. I guess she got rid of that one too. And there's one in Philadelphia. And I forget where the fifth one was. And when we went out, it was 5 of us to go together.
Okay, so now you transferred over to the Seabees in Huntington. What was that unit like? What did they do?
We went down to Gulfport, Mississippi.
Mhm.
Flew us down out of Idlewild, Kennedy. And we were working on a building they were putting up down there on the base. And I was with the first class builder down there, and we were doing the house maintenance. If somebody needed a doorknob or something, we'd work on it, the barracks there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about it. Just you get the list in the morning, what's got to be done, and you do it.
Basically the same deal. You come in 1 weekend a month,
Yes,
2 weeks
yes,
in the
right.
summer. And this CB was in construction.
Right. And then sometimes we would go in for a weekend. We'd go to Floyd Bennett Airfield.
Mhm.
We used one of the hangars right next to the police helicopters there.
Was there still Naval Aviation at Floyd Bennett in those days?
There was just the reserve unit.
Yeah? Well, do you
And,
remember anything about them?
What's that?
Do you remember anything about that unit?
No, not that much, because we didn't spend that much time there. We had a couple of cherry pickers,
Mhm.
a couple of forklifts. Not much material.
And what was your rating when you were with the Seabees?
CN, like SN, construction,
Construction.
right.
Okay. And so basically, you were doing, I don't know if the Navy calls it the same thing, you were doing what we call vertical construction,
Right,
vertical
right,
engineering.
mhm.
Building houses,
Right.
building barracks, not so much the airfields and
No,
the
no,
docks
no,
and-
no, no.
Yeah, okay. And what kind of unit was it? Was it a good unit?
Yes,
Guys got along good?
yes, no problem.
Okay, and then from there, you ended up joining Company E of the Aviation
Right,
in 1980.
yes, roughly, I think 80 or 79, 80, something like that.
What was that like? Well, first of all, what'd you do for Company E?
I was a clerk.
And how did it compare to the Navy? I mean, now, you'd been in the Navy Reserves, now you're in the National Guard. What was different?
Well, it wasn't strictly Army, it was National Guard and, well, no, I just liked the Navy ever since I was a little kid, and I guess there was, in my opinion, there was nothing better than the Navy.
You ended up staying here for 10 years, right?
Yeah,
So, what were drills like here? Typical drills.
well, you get down here Saturday morning, you paint. I paint these floors, and I don't know where, everything changed so much around here. I used to do some painting out in the hangar. Painting there, work in supply, give out material.
And so you finally, you retire in 90?
I retired in 89, 90, something like that, yeah. I thought I was going to get E4, but I didn't get it because I asked the first sergeant, I said, I'm getting out, maybe I get E4, but he didn't give it to me. So it's okay.
You must have had plenty of time in by then.
I never took a test.
Oh,
I don't know why, I could have been third class gunner's mate out in San Diego. All the gunner's mates were getting out. So the exec yeoman says to me, he says, you want a third class? He says, temporarily. it's a temper class, you know, so I just, not really. Because I was going home, so I says, you know, I don't have to extend for 6 months.
Mhm.
And at the time, I didn't want to bother with it, so that was about it.
Well, tell me now, as a kid, you always wanted to be in the Navy. Then you're in the Navy, and you stay with it after the war. What is it you really like about the Navy? I mean, what was the more enjoyable times you had in the Navy?
Ships, being on ships and things like that.
Yeah. What's you know, I'm not a sailor, so I don't know, but what is it that really is nice about being on a ship?
I don't really know. I just fascinated me, you know. It just we went up to. I go to reunions with the ship I was on, and one reunion was up in Newport, Rhode Island. So they took us on a battleship.
Mhm.
The mast is up there, and I was amazed at the armament on the ship. They took it 18 inches thick and all that. You know, it just.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, listen, we're coming down to the last few minutes of the tape here.
Okay.
So, is there anything that kind of stands out in your mind, maybe summarizes your experiences in World War II?
Well, there was certain incidents like when I picked up my ship, it was in Mortai. I don't know if you ever heard of Mortai.
Mhm.
It's south of the Philippines.
Right.
And my uncle was there. He was in the Army. And I never got to see him. You know, he came home and everything all right, but if I was here, he was there. You know, it was always, we couldn't get together.
Mhm.
So we left and we went to Borneo. And I mean, there's so many guys that see so much more.
Do you think it made a difference in your life, being in the service, being in the Navy?
Yeah, I think so.
How so?
Responsibility.
Mhm.
And, I learned how to do things myself.
You're proud of the time you spent in the Navy?
Yes, I am.
Think it made a difference?
Yeah, right.
Well, I'll give you the last final word, since we got about a minute left on the tape.
Okay.
Anything else you wanted to add or comment on?
No, I guess we summed it all up.
Good.
I
All right.
appreciate coming down here and I appreciate talking to you.
No, it's our pleasure.
Just pull it in and park it just like that, you know,
Just the idea, you guys taking those things down the East River, you know, through Hell's Gate, that's not an easy piece of navigating.
right. Well, like I say, he died. His name was Bill McGowan. He was in a police department in the city also.
Mhm.
Too much drinking.
Mm.
And he used to come into the pier and pull alongside and put a reverse and back right down, twirl heaver lines over and tie her up. It was no problem. You know, he was good. He was a great officer. I guess I'll never forget him.
You know, we have a DE up in Albany now, it's where we're stationed.
Oh, yeah. That's
Slater.
Sullivan?
Slater, USS Slater.
Oh, the Slater's up there.
Yeah.
Of course, I belong to the DE Association.
Oh, the Destroyer Escort Historical Foundation? Yeah, so do I.
Oh, yeah?
Well, not that I ever served on one, but I'm the guy who kind of got the Slater up to Albany.
Oh, yeah.